I swear, it's not you, and it's definitely not me. Good morning to you. Good Thursday morning. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is Daily Shot of Pirates. It comes your way bright and early every weekday. If you're into football and or hockey, I also offer daily shots of Steelers and Penguins, the other two teams in town that I cover. I hope you'll check those out as well. Pirates 5, Cardinals 4 in 10 innings, and wow to the finish. Wow to Brian Reynolds coming through with a big tying hit. Don't forget about him in that sequence. And then O'Neal Cruz, very next pitch against a lefty. You know what that shows about him? You know all that stuff that people say where RBIs don't matter and RBIs aren't a skill set? I'm a believer that there isn't clutch, but there is such a thing as an absence of clutch, as shrinking from the moment. Cruz just went up and took his at-bat. You know, this was nothing different to him, having guys in scoring position, having the opportunity to win the game. That's really cool. Rowdy Tellez with a home run, 3 hits, good defense, good base running. Jared Jones coming back, 5 decent innings. He was pulled a little early because of a slight lat strain. Nobody sounded afterward like they were taking it too seriously. All good stuff. Colin Holderman struggled again. We'll see how long that lasts. I still believe he's owed a mulligan or two. And then the bullpen, for the most part, got it done. After that, the only run that was conceded was the automatic runner against Aroldis Chapman. Good stuff. And now, playoffs, right? Isn't that how this goes? Okay, one day, it's the end of the world. The team completely stinks. They're going to bottom out, probably before the All-Star break. The management couldn't care less. Everybody who's here should be in Indy. Everybody who's in Indy should be here. Or it's this. It's the reaction that everyone was having last night at PNC Park. It's the reaction that appeared to be the case virtually. And things get really big and bubbly when they win. I will repeat that this team hasn't won 3 in a row or lost 3 in a row since early May. That's nuts. That's back and forth. That's a pendulum. That's a seesaw. It's a tennis match. You have no idea what you're watching because your head is too busy going left and right and left and right. So one of those things that might cross your mind, especially after an outcome like that, especially after the emotion that gets invested, guys jumping up and down all over the place, key important players coming through like Reynolds, like Cruz, is that, this is it. This is the pivot point. This is the game that's going to set this team onto that very long-awaited streak. This is the one that's going to pick them up, fill them with confidence, and maybe even motivate Ben Cherington into action. And then you look and you see that on today's schedule, it's Martin Perez, who hasn't had a good start, who hasn't been healthy in a little bit more than a month, and who just got rocked in Atlanta in his first game back. And you're reminded that, look, I'm not saying they're not going to win the game today, and I'm saying that it would be a little bit of an upset if they do under this specific circumstance. And then when that happens, it's going to be the end of the world all over again. My stance on this team remains as unchanged as it's been since the beginning of the season, and that is that they need a push. There's plenty of talent in the starting rotation. There's some talent in the lineup. And within that lineup, there are at least a couple of players who are beginning to rise up who were nowhere near doing any such thing early on. Tellez notable among them. But more's needed. More's been needed. More was needed going back to the offseason. But we can't redo history and pretend that Cherington cared in the offseason. We also can't redo history and pretend that Cherington cared through the first half of the season. When I say cared, I'm not being snarky here. I'm being literal in referring to the 2024 season. I'm not suggesting he doesn't care about his job or doesn't care about winning. I don't think he cares about the 2024 season. I don't think he ever did. So please, let's have that part clear. And again, none of that can be redone or undone. The damage is there. The record is the record. But something still can be done. There's a little less than a month, but that's plenty of time between now and the trade deadline. Teams actually are making trades now, so that narrative's about to die a gory death. So rather than sitting and waiting and hoping and forecasting recoveries and predicting grand returns from players who haven't produced anything to date, how about, actually doing something? Even if it's on the immediate heels of an outcome like last night. It's okay to think about emotion as connected to sports. It really is. They've always been intrinsically tied. If you picture that team feeling as good as it had to last night. I mean, everybody except Holderman, and Holderman's mature enough and confident enough that he'll bounce back sooner rather than later. But imagine that general vibe. And then imagine all those guys showing up in the clubhouse today and seeing middle of the order bat just having been acquired. Seeing for the first time all season that the front office has their backs, that the front office hasn't completely tanked out or didn't tank out at the beginning of the 2024 season. I don't know if it would get them a W. That's going to depend more on Perez than anybody else, but gotta get something rolling here. You gotta get something going downhill. When we come back, J1Q. This portion of Daily Shot of Pirates is brought to you by our friends at North Shore Tavern. That's directly across Federal Street from PNC Park. It's home of Steak on a Stone, an eating experience, underscoring the word experience. The steak is brought to you partially cooked on an 800-degree stone, and you do the rest. It's a ton of fun, it's a great meal, and it's a baseball atmosphere like no other in Pittsburgh. North Shore Tavern, right across Federal Street from PNC Park. Today's J1Q comes from Ohm, who says, DK, baseball is fun. The Pirates' offense has been mediocre at best. What can they do with the bats that they have currently? And I like this question. It came to me after the game, and it felt a lot more balanced and a lot less woo, woo, woo than some other stuff that came in. And again, I'm not knocking anybody who feels that way. How you feel about sports is up to you. But I'm thinking along the same lines here. Tellez is coming off a very productive, from the batting average standpoint, from getting lots of singles and all that other stuff, June. What's been most encouraging about his July to date is that he's hit the ball very hard and very far, including, as was the case once last night, when he made an out. Screamer of a ball. That's the Tellez that you want from a couple of years ago in Milwaukee. That means a lot more to me than what I was seeing in June. And if one or two others were to emerge, you would probably have something. You'd have a situation where, let's say, just to drop a couple of names here, because Ke'Bryan Hayes has had some better at-bats of late. He doesn't seem to be getting that credit from fans. I think there's some who will just look at results as opposed to the quality of the overall plate appearance, how hard he hits the ball, how much he's on it. Is he spreading the ball to different parts of the field? He's starting to look more like himself. I find Key's at-bats over the last, probably beginning in Atlanta, the last 4 games or so to be encouraging, if not necessarily definitive. I loved seeing Jack Sawinski come up with 3 hits. He Didn't do that last night. I went 0 for 2 with a K. He's a different case. Jack's going to be tough. And I'd also like to think that even if only because it can't get any lower, the catching position will eventually produce something, anything resembling offense. But at the moment, you've got Henry Davis shut down in his AA rehab stint. He's actually back in Pittsburgh now because of continuing effects of a concussion. Joey Bart might be the guy who's carrying things for a bit, but I don't know. Yasmani Grandal's going to get some games. He can't hit anymore. There still really isn't a right fielder in this, and I've only been saying that since the beginnings of spring training. That was one of the many things Ben Cherington just said, not this year. Maybe some other year that I take seriously. Edward Olivares isn't just playing. He's being slotted into cleanup. So how much of that is enough? You know, it's easy to say, and I'd been saying it myself, so I'm not an exception, that, well, you get all this spectacular starting pitching, all you need to do is score a couple of runs. But that's actually not the case, because the starting pitching is going to have its issues. It's not going to be immaculate for the final 3 months. Mitch Keller got hit around for the first time a couple nights ago. Paul Skeens, look, he's still been phenomenal, okay? But he's given up these leadoff home runs in the last couple of games. Like, I can't say anything negative about Skeens. You should win every game that he goes out there. But for the other 4, you know, there's some mortality involved. And there are times that you need your bats or even your gloves to get you out of a game, to steal some that you shouldn't have. Kind of like last night, actually. And my belief, now as then, is that this isn't enough. It's intriguing, it's got possibilities, but it isn't enough. I appreciate the question. I appreciate everybody listening to Daily Shot of Pirates. I'll be over at PNC Park this afternoon covering the series finale for DK Pittsburgh Sports, and this program will be back tomorrow.